Esteban Ocon is in a fight for his future both with the Haas team and in Formula 1. Only a dramatic upturn in his performances will give him any hope of staying at the team for a third year in 2027, and there are numerous candidates in contention to take his seat, and one rookie in a particularly strong position. Forget the reports to the contrary, no final decision has been made, and Haas won't rush into a deal given the driver market remains unstable. After all, you never know who might become available if there's a major move involving a driver like, say, a certain Max Verstappen. The knock-on effects of such a seismic move can be guessed at imprecisely, but not accurately predicted. For evidence of that, just look at how Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari move shaped the 2025 driver market. What we do know is that Ocon hasn't been good enough at Haas. And while there are mitigating factors that have held him back, his future is hanging by a thread, and realistically, the die is probably already as good as cast. Ocon does still have some hope of retaining the seat. There's an option in place for 2027, and the Haas team would be delighted if he hit his best form in the remaining 3 races before the summer break and made a strong case for himself. We'll come back to Ocon shortly, but who else is in the mix? Haas is fortunate enough to be in a position where there are multiple credible options, but recently one strong contender has emerged. This is McLaren reserve and reigning Formula 2 champion Leonardo Fornaroli. Fornaroli made his F1 weekend debut behind the wheel of Lando Norris's McLaren in FP1 at the Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix last month. A few days later, he returned to F1 action in a 2-day TPC test, that's testing of previous cars, behind the wheel of last year's Haas VF25. This test was offered to Fornaroli by Haas to, as team principal Io Komatsu described it, have a chance to look at him. 21-year-old Fornaroli made a big impression in the test with his speed, feedback and professionalism. That's despite not having any opportunity to prepare for the Haas test in its simulator and adapting to a car with very different characteristics to the McLaren machinery he had previously driven, not only the 2026 car but also the 2023 machine. Crucially, he also showed good pace on the low fuel qualifying simulation runs. McLaren rates Fornaroli highly. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella described him as proactive in engaging with engineers, a note-taker who shares ideas willingly. And most important of all, Stella also described him as fast, whether it's in the simulator, in TPC machinery, or in the current car in free practice. It's understood that should Haas decide it wants Fornaroli, there is a letter of intent in place that will make it possible. That's by no means a done deal, simply something that means if Haas does want to take him on loan, then it can happen. And unlike when Audi signed Gabriel Bortoleto, a predecessor of Fornaroli in the McLaren Drive Development Programme for 2025, and took full control of him, Haas is willing to take loan deals. That's proved by the presence of Ollie Behrman, who is contracted to Ferrari. None of this means Fornaroli will definitely take Ocon's Haas seat in 2027, but he's certainly a very serious contender who has made a strong case with his test performance. Fornaroli is not the only contender in the mix. Toyota contracted Ryo Hirakawa is also a legitimate option. A 32-year-old who last raced a single-seater in 2023 might seem an unlikely choice. However, he has racked up 7 FP1 outings for Haas, Alpine and McLaren, as well as significant TPC mileage for Haas. He's held in high esteem by the team. Toyota is a staunch supporter of his and keen to see him race in F1, and he's also shown good pace. After all, Hirakawa is a multiple world endurance champion and has a good single-seater CV that includes race wins in Japanese Super Formula. Hirakawa also ran in the Jerez TPC test with Haas, and Komatsu holds him in high regard. There's also the possibility of another Ferrari prospect, F2 race winner Rafael Camara. The 21-year-old is currently third in F2 and Ferrari is pushing Haas to take him. That doesn't mean Haas either has to or will, because Ferrari has no direct say in that. For example, Ferrari was eager for Antonio Giovinazzi to race for Haas in 2023, leading to FP1 outings in 2022. However, the team decided Nico Hülkenberg was the better choice. While it's possible Camara could get a TPC outing for Haas, there's currently no plan in place for that to happen. Likely, it would require Ferrari to fund it. Camara is also regarded as needing a little more time to hone his craft, meaning Fornaroli is ahead of him in the queue. Yuki Tsunoda, who was of interest to Haas when it was considering options for the seat Ocon took in 2025, is also a potential target. Haas simulator driver Jack Doohan can't be discounted given he's on the team books. And then there's Ocon. He has the advantage of incumbency, but it's fair to say his stint at Haas has been a disappointment. Ocon's Haas stint has so far fallen short of expectations, but there have been high points where he's performed at something like close to his best. For example, he qualified 8th and finished 7th in Monaco last year, produced a strong Japanese Grand Prix weekend in 2026 that only yielded 1 point for 10th, and recovered from a tough Friday to take an outstanding 7th place in last year's Abu Dhabi finale. but those high peaks have been scaled with less frequency during his 18 months at Haas than the rest of his F1 career, and they are also outweighed by the lows. On his most recent outing in Austria, he complained about problems with parts inconsistency robbing him of rear downforce relative to the other car. He described this as costing quite a lot of points of downforce and highlighted the flaw as the source of the problems. It's true that Haas has struggled with components not performing as expected. That's something Komatsu confirmed in Spain. However, he stressed that it's affected both drivers at times. This points to the concern that has often arisen with Ocon. At his best, he is capable of qualifying laps and race performances that stand comparison with the best in F1. However, he has always been inconsistent and also had too many weekends where he struggled. But even by his standards, his time with Haas has been up and down, but with more downs than ups. Komatsu said in January that nobody is satisfied with Esteban's sporting results last year, and that we expected more from him. While he included the important caveat that it was not entirely Ocon's fault and it was 50-50 team and driver, it's clear that Ocon went into the season under pressure. He's been comprehensively outperformed by Behrman, who was on average just under a tenth and a half faster than Ocon in qualifying last year. That figure has climbed to well over a tenth and a half this year. In terms of points, he was outscored by a narrow margin of 41-38 last year, but this year Behrman is 18-3 up. The car problems mean that the performance comparison between the two has been distorted, but that doesn't mean that Behrman overall hasn't been by far the stronger driver, and that fundamentally is what means Ocon's facing the exit door. Car problems are one thing, and they have happened to Ocon. However, previous teams have also been frustrated by what is regarded as a tendency to blame all the deficits on that. Last year he struggled on the brakes, and often cited that as a problem. However, there was a telling case study comparison with Behrman, who tends to brake harder and deal with a little more rear instability on turn-in. Ocon struggled in comparison, hence his complaints about the brakes, and sometimes had to dial in a little more understeer to settle the car to suit him, costing him time. When things are right, Ocon can be brilliant. That's the brilliance Haas needs to see, and it needs to see it in the races before the summer break if he's to have any chance of saving his seat. While F1 opportunities for Ocon appear limited, he is a race winner who will have 200 starts under his belt by the end of the season. He's also only 29, meaning he has plenty of years left in him. One tantalising possibility could be Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso's future is uncertain, and he said in Austria that he plans to make his decision during or just after the August shutdown. He insists he intends to remain involved with Aston Martin, but this could be in a non-F1 driving role. Perhaps it could even lead to outings in the Aston Martin Valkyrie hypercar for a return to the Le Mans 24 Hours. Aston Martin's struggles make the Aston Martin seat one that is unlikely to appeal to the big names. Ocon's experience and his good relationship with team owner Lawrence Stroll and Lance Stroll, once describing the latter as his best mate, make him an option if Alonso does decide to step away from F1. Ocon is a driver who reached F1 in the first place against the odds, given he lacked funding. He achieved it thanks to getting support from those who saw his qualities, including the Gravity Sports Management program he was on the books of in his younger days, and then Mercedes, which took him on after that scheme ended. While this could be the end for Ocon in F1, don't underestimate what he has to offer and how hard he will fight to stay on the grid. He's beaten the odds many times before, but they are very much against him now.